Hey everyone, it's Reese here, and in today's video we're going to be having a look at note-taking. Some of the tips to think about in terms of the right way to take notes, the kind of notes you should take, and what you should do with your notes once you've got them. So, question number one of note-taking is how exactly you're going to do it. And really, there are three main techniques, I think. So, there's the traditional pen and paper technique. You're literally writing down notes as you go. There is the computer technique. You have a document open, you are typing notes as you go. And then increasingly now with AI, there is this sort of transcription technique in which you essentially record and let the transcription do it for you. Now, none of them is inherently better than the other. They all have different advantages and different disadvantages. It really is a matter of preference, I think. It really is a matter of figuring out what way works best for you. Do you sort of absorb information more through typing it or writing it or listening to it? Do you benefit more from having something on a screen to one side that you can use? Is it useful for you to sort of physically sort of have a handwritten thing in front of you? The physical thing makes it easier for you to process info. There's no, as I say, it sort of is a matter of personal preference. I myself am sort of more a pen and paper person, but what matters is finding a way that works for you. So now we move on to the question of preparation. Before you're in a session, a lecture, a tutorial, a seminar, whatever, in which you need to take your notes, what can you do to set yourself up in advance? I would say, is there a key source? Is there something that you can have looked at in advance? If it's a lecture about a particular book, say, can you read the book in advance so you're able to follow more effectively what is being talked about? Sort of doing that work, if and sort of any other work that is recommended, be that a tutor giving you notes to process or such. Having done preparation work is very useful because then you can follow the content better. Um, then sort of see what materials are available. If the lecture PowerPoint, say, or a tutorial slide or whatever will be available after the session, you know that you don't have to waste time writing down, say, a quote that's on the slides because you know you'll have access to that later on. So knowing what stuff will be available to you afterwards is very, very useful. Because it means you can then concentrate your effort on the areas that are of more use, which I'll discuss in a moment. And then try and turn off the distractions. By which I mean, say, if you're taking notes on your computer, close the social media tabs, close the notifications, that sort of stuff. Really, you want to set yourself up effectively for note taking by giving yourself an environment that enables you to focus best on the things about which you'll be taking notes. So when you're in the session, be that a lecture or a tutorial or a seminar, the question that's really the key one, and one that I think is quite hard to crack, is what notes are actually worth taking? What are the things that are worth adding to your selection? And part of that is knowing what the session is for. So in a lecture, it's broadly sort of giving you information, it's giving you context, it's giving you some interpretation and some sense of the critical and sort of cultural landscape of a particular topic or source. In a seminar, it's digging into that more, but it's also coming up with arguments and sort of having those discussions, those debates. Similarly, in tutorials and those kinds of sessions. Um, so it's a matter, and this is a skill that develops as people go through the education system. So no one has this straight away, I promise you. No one has it immediately. Is trying to come up with what notes are worth taking. If in doubt, writing sort of everything you're able to is sort of the sort of better solution than having not enough. But it's a case of sort of trying to unpick what is valuable. And what is valuable, you can figure this out in a number of ways. Some lecturers will tell you, they'll say, oh, this is a key thing, make a note. You can look, if you have them, at assessment titles or and see what sort of questions you're going to be asked. If a module sort of, if there's a question about a particular text, and then the lecturer mentions something that sort of is obviously linked to the question on that text, then you probably want to make a note of it. And lastly, you'll see a story sort of develop throughout modules or assignments or courses, and you'll be able to see the things that are recurring, the ideas. So write those down. If anything leaps out at you as obviously interesting or important or noteworthy, write it down. Then lastly, I'm personally of the view that this is the most important thing. I know sort of other academics who disagree with me here, but it's my video, so, run with me. I'm of the view that how you organise the notes, how you compile them after you've taken them, really is the key thing. It really is the thing that sort of really makes your note taking effective. So how do you compile notes? To my mind, this is my own approach. Compiling all the relevant notes in one place. So if it's a module, having week one's content, week two's content, etc. All those papers together, all that all on one document on the computer, all in the same folder, wherever it is. Sort of having the logical material together, and then in a sense, kind of processing it. So going through your notes again. Be that immediately after the session or after a seminar or a tutorial or a discussion, to sort of really pull out some of the key things that you know are important or that you think will be important. It might be the case that you highlight key phrases, and people, I know friends who sort of go through with highlighters that refer to particular things, particular key ideas, particular names, particular points of history, where they highlight the primary sources, the secondary sources. However sort of organising it makes sense to you, but sort of going through and sort of consolidating it, so then when you look back, when you're on week 10 planning and assessment and you look back at week 2 stuff, it makes sense to you, and you're also logically able to see the sort of stuff that you want then and there. And it's processing it in whatever way works for you. So I know people who made cue cards with their notes, and people who sort of took handwritten notes and then would type them up. And in that process, they were able to sort of filter the material. People who sort of added all their notes to one big shared drive and shared them with everyone else on the in their friend circle who was on the module. So then they had sort of 6 sets of notes, the same lecture, and thus 6 perspectives on the important things. Whatever the approach is, sort of how you process, taking the notes is one thing, but it's what you do with them afterwards that I think makes that note taking effective. So figure out why you're taking these notes, and what you're going to do with them. How are you going to make them useful for you in the confines of that particular module, be it for an assessment, etc. But then in the long run, if these are things you look back at, how can you give them the most value to you? It will be a lot of work, although it gradually takes less work as you get into the swing, I think. But future you will very much thank you for it, that much I can promise you. Then I think my last piece of advice would be to check out different techniques. So Google note-taking techniques, etc. And see some of the examples, some of the techniques, some of the processes they recommend. Be that, I looked them up while I was making this video. There are different note-taking techniques where you have a line for each important topic, where if you're doing it on the computer, you have folders for different, say, sources, different lectures. It's difficult, I think, to find the system that works for you, and this is true of sort of anything in education. It's not always the case that the first technique you try will be the right one, and so just make yourself aware of different techniques that are out there, and do a quick Google search, talk to a tutor, talk to a lecturer, see what they do, and give these things a go. If you find that the technique that you're using currently, the way that you're currently taking notes, doesn't quite work for you. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but just know that it's something that might happen. So there we go, some tips and thoughts and pieces of advice on note-taking. Hopefully this has been useful. If you have any thoughts of your own, any comments or suggestions, please do comment them below. Otherwise, do like and subscribe and ring a bell so you know when all my content comes. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. As always, I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.